90.5.
He has labored, he has suffered to lead his people into the land of freedom. He is the Redeemer and the champion of liberty, of human equality. Let's salute him, fellow Ghanaians, the nation's founder, Sajifo Kwame Nkrumah. May God bless him, Ghana showboy, Africa's great son, Sajifo Dr. Nkrumah.
Ago when you come with Makasa Kakra, and when you come when Tiam Kakra, Menkasapi. Damabara Makade Bakans Babukakran and Yamakan Fancy. At long last, the battle has ended. And thus, Ghana, your beloved country, is free forever. And here again, I want to take the opportunity to thank the chiefs and people of this country, the youth, the farmers, the women, who have so nobly fought and won this battle. Also, I want to thank the valiant ex-servicemen who have so cooperated with me in this mighty task of freeing our country from foreign rule and imperialism. And as I pointed out at our party conference at Sorbonne, I made it quite clear that from now on today,
I love Radio Gold 90.5.
we must change our attitudes, our minds. We must realize that from now on we are no more a colonial but a free and independent people. But also, as I pointed out, that also entails hard work. I am depending upon the millions of the country, the chiefs and people, to help me to reshape the destiny of this country. We are prepared to build it up and make it a nation that will be respected by every other nation in the world. We know we are going to have difficult beginnings, but again, I'm relying upon your support. I'm relying upon your hard work. Seeing you in these thousands, it doesn't matter how far my eye goes. I can see that you are here in your millions. And my last warning to you is that you ought to stand firm behind us so that we can prove to the world that when the African is given a chance, he can show to the world that he's somebody. We shall no more go back to sleep anymore. Today, from now on, there is a new African in the world. That new African is ready to fight his own battle and show that, after all, the black man is capable of managing his own affairs. We are going to demonstrate to the world, to the other nations, young as we are, that we are prepared to lay our own foundation. As I said in the assembly just a minute ago, I made it point that we are going to say that we create our own African personality and identity. It's the only way in which we can show the world that we are ready for our own battle. But today, may I call upon you all that at this great day, Let us all remember that nothing in the world can be done unless it has the purported support of God. We have done the battle, and we again rededicate ourselves not only in the struggle to emancipate other territories in Africa. Our independence is meaningless unless it is linked up with the total liberation of the African continent. Let us now, fellow Ghanaians, let us now ask for God's blessing. And for only 2 seconds, in your thousands and millions, I want to ask you to pause only for 1 minute and give thanks to Almighty God for having led us through obstacles, difficulties, imprisonments, hardship and suffering to have brought us to the end of our struggle today.
He has labored, he has suffered to lead his people into the land of freedom. He is the Redeemer and the champion of liberty, of human equality. Let's salute him, fellow Ghanaians, the nation's founder, Sergeant Kwame Nkrumah. May God bless him, Ghana showboy, Africa's great son, Sergeant Dr. Nkrumah.
Africa's great son, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, 20 minutes after 9 here on your power station, Radio Gold 90.5 FM. It's good to welcome you to today's edition of Alhaji and Alhaji. Today being Saturday, 2nd of the month of December 2017. We thank God for a brand new month, and the pleasure is all mine to welcome you to today's show. Here, we don't mince words, we say it as it is, and we ensure that we bring the truth to the fore in all of our deliberations here on the show. Once more, welcome. My name is Samuel Eshen. Today, we'll be looking at very, very interesting issues, the issues that have dominated or taken center stage throughout the week. And this week, it's been about His Excellency the President's interview that he granted to Al Jazeera and the expose by the CNN on the slave trade that is going on in Libya. President Akufo-Addo, in an interview with the Gulf News channel Al Jazeera during, the week, addressed a series of national and continental issues. And when asked why homosexuality remained a critical offense in Ghana, the president said, "I don't believe that in Ghana so far a sufficiently strong coalition has emerged which is having that impact of public opinion that will say, change it. Less than half a new paradigm in Ghana." He added that like in other parts of the world, it will take the activities of groups and individuals to try bringing it up for discussion. The president said that at the moment, I don't feel and I don't see that in Ghana. There is that strong current of opinion that is saying that this is something that we need even to deal with. It is not so far a matter which is on the agenda. So that interview took center stage in the discourse on social media and the mass media as well, with people expressing varied opinions on it, most of it being against the president for that utterance, considering our beliefs as a people, our cultural heritage, and the fact that most of the religious, bodies in Ghana, do not subscribe to homosexuality. And it's taking center stage in all the discourse, with many calling on His Excellency the President to clarify the issue and also explain what he meant to say, making references to past presidents, former President John Dramani Mahama, former President John Kufuor, former President John Evans Atta Mills, who stood his grounds to say homosexuality is a no-go area in Ghana. That matter, was something which trended throughout the whole week. Also, We got the expose from CNN of how Africans are being traded in Libya as slaves. The brutalities that were being meted out to, our brothers and sisters who want to migrate from Ghana through to the Sahara to Europe, the treatments they have to go through. This is not the first time we are hearing such stories. The migrant situation of those seeking to cross through the Mediterranean to Europe has been a matter that has been dominant throughout the entire year, with boats sinking and people dying and people being repatriated and the rest of them. The Ministry for Foreign Affairs hints and says that they have been able to repatriate 126 of these Ghanaians. But it's a matter that is still ongoing, and this morning we would want to focus attention on these two key issues that took center stage in the discourse on most of the platforms. And to help me with this matter, Alhaji A.B.A. Fuseni is the MP for Sanarugo. Dr. David Percy is a student of history and politics. Mr. Bernard Mona is the national chairman of the PNC, and they will help me discuss thoroughly President Akufo-Addo's statement in an interview on Al Jazeera in relations to homosexuality and related matters. Also, would we analyze critically the modern-day slave trade in Libya and what UN, AU, and ECOWAS must do to curtail such a development in the future? Optional comments would be accepted. As always, your thoughts, your views, your comments form an integral part of the show, and we always encourage you to do so. And you can do so looking for me on Twitter and Facebook. You'll find me using the handle at Samuel Asian GH. It's all spelled together. You find me there, you add me, and you start sending your comments through. That's for Twitter and Facebook. Samuel Asian GH. You find me, you add me, you send your comments, I'll read them live. We are live on GFM Radio in London, on Sekpele 104.3 in Likpe, on Shine 96.9 in Akachi, on Lukusi Radio 96.1 Vet Golokwati, on Radio Pando 102.5, on Global FM 105.1 in Ho, on SAPS Radio Online, and also live on our website www.radiogold905.com, and also other affiliates who pick the show live in the central region as well. And you can monitor as well by going to the Google Play Store and searching for the Radio Gold application. You download it, you install it, and you'll be able to listen to us anywhere in the world. As always, I will give you the latest with respect to the headlines of the newspapers that we have with us, and then the conversation would start. If you look on the front page of the Ghanaian Times newspaper, $100,000 reward for 2017 best farmer. That's on the front page of the paper. The GRA cashier in court for stealing over 2 million Ghana cedis. Also, businessman gets 11 years for theft. That's on the front page of the Ghanaian Times newspaper. You find on the front page of the Daily Guide newspaper, Baumia bids Macron farewell. On the front page of the paper, I won't repeat in commerce industrialization mistakes. That's according to the president. And then best farmer grabs $100,000 cash. And two Kumaka students die mysteriously, all captured on the front page of the Daily Guide newspaper. Daily Graphic has on its front page, Philip Ajiman, best farmer 2017. He takes home $100,000. Also, government fast-tracking modernization of agri. That's according to the president. And avoid sexual relations during peace missions. That's on the front page of the paper, and it has the defense minister's picture there, the Honorable Dominic Nitiwu. If you look on the front page of the Spectator newspaper, it says Tree Bible inspired my lyrics. It's got a picture of Obrafo, the musician, on the front page of the paper. And the man bites girlfriend's tongue for refusing marriage. Also, Yaya Tamaklo, Miss Ghana USA 2015 first runner-up. She joined the newborn care champions to mark 2017 World Maturity Day. That's all on the front page of the Spectator newspaper. Thieves dig tunnel under Kenyan bank, steal over $482,000. That's all captured on the front page of the paper. So that's this by way of the headlines of the newspapers we have with us this morning. Our conversation starts today, and my guests are in the studio for us to begin the conversation. I'll start off with Alhaji Bernard Mona. Let me start with Bernard Mona on our first topic, which has to do with the president's statement on homosexuality in the interview he granted Al Jazeera. Mr. Mona, good morning.
Good morning, Shan. I ran into a bit of traffic on the Openqua Road, and I apologize for coming late. And then also good morning to Alhaji Hussein. Let me, if you permit me, start with the National Farmers Day. Just a small point.
That's okay.
That for the past 33 years, we have been celebrating our farmers. Indeed, one would say one of the greatest and earliest profession of mankind is farming. Whether it was in the form of hunting and gathering, or whichever stage that it was, farming has always been with human beings. And as long as we exist, we have to eat, we have to survive. And therefore, on this day, it is important to commend the farmers of our nation for having the courage and indeed the determination in the face of all the wrong things that we are doing in relation to farming. They continue to put up amidst risk in order to feed our nation and also to sustain income levels within our nation. I congratulate also the individuals that eventually emerge as the best farmers for this particular year. What was intriguing is that I noted that in this particular year's celebration, regional ministers were summoned to come from their various regions with so-called selected best farmers to a central point, denying the regions of the presence of the regional ministers who normally would do regional farmers day celebrations, and also appreciating the contributions of these ones. I don't know what purpose it serves to bring somebody who will be a regional best farmer from Upper West to Ashanti region to come and crown him. I don't know what purpose it serves for Greater Accra regional minister to leave Accra and go to Ashanti region, Volta regional minister, and everybody. Virtually, I think that it was the Central Regional Minister who asked his deputy to be there. So obviously, I think that this goes to justify the call by GAU that the expenditure, the investments that are spent on the organization is far above what is given to the real farmers on the ground, and that there are many issues that this nation need to consider, including the issue of genetically modified foods and the Plant Builders Bill as in its current form in Parliament. They have said that if that bill is passed, it portends leveraging our seeds and any future growth of agriculture to Monsanto's, and that this nation cannot survive. I grew up as a farmer, and I know that anytime we harvest our maize, our millet, or guinea corn, what we did was that you just looked for the best ones and you put them there for the next planting season. This time round with the GMOs, you are not able to take your own seedlings and put it down for the next farming season. You plant this year and the next year you have to get new seeds. If you go and plant, you get zero. What it means is that we are auctioning our food, we are auctioning everybody. The sovereignty of what we have is being sold, and if care is not taken, one day somebody will generate seedlings that are poisonous, and we all eat it and die. So if that company, giant company, decides that for this particular year, seeds that are going to Ghana should be infested with cancer, we will all die of cancer. And it is this that we must take seriously. So when we hear the Minister for Agri and others going out for me on a naive path, trying to justify genetically modified foods and also the Plant Breeders Bill in Parliament, I think that it is unacceptable. Having said that, it is important to once again appreciate that farming has brought revenues to individuals. They have brought revenue and income to our nation. They have increased our tax levels. They have ensured that we have been able to get food. And of course, all these things have the potential of ensuring that our balance of payment is not in disarray. It also ensures that our import bill is reduced if we are able to produce sufficiently to feed ourselves. I will therefore encourage that government will listen to institutions like GAU so that their inputs on farming will become more relevant and ensure that agriculture is not auctioned to the highest bidder in the world. Having paid homage to our farmers, let me come to talk about some issues that has bothered us over the past days, particularly the issue of the president getting a sole opportunity to speak out his mind on many issues that bother Ghana, and also to state his view, if you want, his foreign policy to the rest of the world through the Arab network called Al Jazeera. It is obvious that our president decided that instead of taking the path that Ghana has always taken, decided to deviate and at the end of the day shrink the soaring image of Ghana as one that has always blazed the trail, not only for Africa but for the rest of the marginalized world. Indeed, we are all told the first time that Alhaji Dr. Kwame Nkrumah stepped foot at the UN, he displayed what a Ghanaian is. Not only in the dress, because as everybody was expecting him to come in suit or something, Alhaji Dr. Kwame Nkrumah jumped on stage in his kente and white inside. And you know, it was something that is unheard of, because almost everybody that goes to the UN is seen in a suit trying to portray the best suit. And this is a man whose physical outfit demonstrated the African personality and a new paradigm in world stage, that we were not going to compromise ourselves as Africans, but that we are going to take our destiny and live by our own culture. That demonstration for me should inspire every Ghanaian leader, should inspire every African leader to want to portray our culture, particularly at such international fora. Our culture is largely represented by the kind of dressing that we put up, or clothing that we put across. And I think that Nkrumah displayed that. Years later, we saw others using smock and kente at various points to redisplay that. And I have seen that I am yet to see a Nigerian head of state that has gone to the UN wearing a suit. I am yet to see that. In fact, I'm yet to see a Nigerian head of state that visits any nation wearing a suit. I am yet to see that. So, what are the Nigerians telling us? They have a culture. They believe in their own. And therefore, we should believe in our own. So, President Akufo-Addo at this occasion first did not believe in his own, because he was suitably dressed. And second, confronted with a straightforward question, he decided to muddy waters. And I've heard countless attempts to teach our president English. Because all those people, the Minister for Information, the Minister for Communication, and all the radio commentators that I've heard speak about this matter are telling us that the president doesn't understand English, and that they are well schooled in English and they understand more what the president wants to say than what the president himself has said. And that the rest of us who listen to the president in his own words actually have not even gone to school. That is the import I get from all the attempts to justify what the president said to the Al Jazeera lady. The president said in black and white that he has lived in the United Kingdom for God knows how long. And at the time that he was living there, gay and lesbian rights was a non-issue. It was even a crime. But that because there has been a sustained momentum, today it is a right in that part of the world and in many other parts. He is not seeing the same momentum generated to cause us to sit down to rethink our laws. And that is bound to happen. It's a matter of time. And that if civil society, if there is a current, current, it's not just when you say current, it's like some power. You understand? There should be some force. He has not seen that force of mobilization that will lend our society to agree on this. That is what the president said. Does anybody understand English better than the president? More so when he has told us that he'll even live there for long. So all those people who are coming now trying to rationalize what the president wants to say, I know our president very well. That anytime he wants to make a statement, he makes it as forceful and as categorical as he can. So the president meant what he said. That there must be. And what even was astonishing in all this is that the president opened a strategy box for the lesbian and gay. That look, if the only, or to get your issue up, start some manifestations, put some power behind talking, mobilize, and compel us to listen to you so we can offer you your rights in quote. A bit devastated that our president could make such points and pointers. I see homosexuality as an abnormality. I see homosexuality as having to do with people's levels of sanity. And if something is not normal, you can't provide rights for abnormal situations. If an insane situation, you look for remedies to reverse the insanity to sanity. That is how come when you see drug addicts, we take them to rehab centers. That is how come when you see other criminals, we take them through the prisons in the hope that they will reform. You don't jettison them because they are human beings. And I'm not calling for jettison or throwing away lesbians and gays. They are human beings. But their acts are not justified, they are not supported by any evidence anywhere. And what shocks me is that any politician, right-thinking politician, will make such pronouncements. Because first, every politician needs numbers. The only way we can continue to have the numbers is that there is reproduction. I have not come across anywhere where lesbians have given birth or gay has given birth. Put two men in one room for donkey years, and I'm certain that they cannot reproduce. Put two women in a room, lock them up, feed them, and let them make all the sex that they can. I'm not sure they will be able to reproduce. So the existence of gay and lesbianism is even a threat to the human population and existence. Assuming all of us decide to buy into it. So a man sees a woman and is of no consequence. A woman sees a man and is of no consequence. I can assure you in the next 10 years, we will not exist. Where would we be to look into people for their votes? That should be a source of worry. It's even shocking that our president makes this statement at a time when our free SHS is having difficulties. At a time where kids, for the first time, are leaving their homes and they are going to school and they are not guarded and guided by teachers. They have to go into communities to rent and to stay. They are exposed to all the dangers in life. And so, all of a sudden, we have seen an influx of European leaders in Ghana. Do you know the people they bring here? Some of them may not go back. They will take advantage and locate where these poor students are and indoctrinate them. So you are in your Sankana and your ward is in Amasai Krom, and you think that, look, this my ward will go to school only to turn out to become a gay or a lesbian, because our president says that there must be a momentum to sustain the rise of these people. You know, I have listened to many people when confronted with this situation. And I've listened to Uhuru Kenyatta when Barack Obama visited Kenya. And in the meeting, Barack Obama was insisting that such rights should be granted. Uhuru Kenyatta said outrightly, we share common problems. We are confronted, America is confronted with many issues just as Kenya is confronted with issues. And that the issues that America is confronted with has to do with terrorism and these rights. We in Kenya and Africa are confronted with terrorism of poverty, of illiteracy, of hunger. And those are our priorities. These other rights that you want to bring on Kenya, they are alien and they are not any issue for us. We will not even think about it. Straight away, we will not even think about it. There are no issues. When something is not an issue, can it even come for discussion? That was the position that Uhuru Kenyatta took. When the president of Ghana, not the president of Ghana, when Africans were told that your ability to access aid, grants from Britain will be tied to your acceptance of lesbians and gay rights. President Mills stated that David Cameron had a right to determine policies and programs that fit the peculiar society that he lives in. And that David Cameron does not have that authority to determine for us Ghanaians what policy prescriptions we'll have to put in place. And as long as he, Professor Atamils, remains president, there cannot be any talk of gay and lesbian rights. Definitive. President Mugabe said that the only time he will grant rights to gay and lesbians is that he will catch you. When they catch you, they will put you in a room for 1 year. If there is conception and delivery, you will be allowed your rights. Gambia, we are told that if you attempt, you'll be decapitated. In Nigeria, overnight, the Senate has to meet to pass a law making it even clearer in their books that these gender rights are not acceptable. So with all these examples, how come that our president is giving hope? How come? You know, I have a suspicion. One of the champions of gay and lesbian rights is Gabi Asari Ochiridako. And somewhere in 2007 thereabout, 2006, 2007 thereabout, Gabi was fronting for the gay conference to be hosted in Ghana under President Kufuor. The public uproar, President Kufuor stopped that conference from being organized in Ghana. No one doubts the closeness and the influence that Gabi has over President Nana Akufo-Addo. No one doubts it. So it's no surprise that when confronted with a question that is to say is a no for us because it is unethical, it is not our culture, our president is unable to say so and is rather suggesting strategies on how these people can get their rights or their issue brought up for discussion in Ghana. I am disgusted by the near muteness of our religious bodies. The Catholic Church has not spoken. The Christian Council has spoken. But the Catholic Secretariat is the biggest. The Catholic Secretariat is the biggest. We have a bishops' conference. I come from a Catholic background. It's the biggest you can find anywhere, Alhaji. Particularly in the 3 northern regions. The Catholic Church has no equal. What is this silence about? That is not leadership. That is not leadership. So the Christian Council has made a statement which has not even received the kind of publicity that it's supposed to. My friends in the Muslim fraternity, it's almost non-existent. I've not heard the Ahmadiyya Muslim Mission say anything. They have a great following. I've not heard the Tijaniya group say anything. And I've not heard the Chief Imam's office.
I think that
his spokesperson
made a statement.
Yeah.
For the Chief Imam.
It must be more potent.
Okay. You can say that.
It must be more potent, more viral than what we are seeing. Since the president is suggesting a strategy that will lead to a momentum that will bring to the fore the issue of these rights, we cannot take it lying down. Macron has been here. The Queen, what's her name? Denmark has been here. Italy has been here. Luxembourg is here. And you know Luxembourg is considered one of the safe places to deposit illegal money. Because tax and other things is non-existent. So if you carry any money, you can go and hide it there. So those who know that small tiny country is a safe havens. And so all manner of things happen there. And honestly, I don't know what hope there is. If a president cannot speak with such clarity on matters of this nature, then Africa is in problem. Because Ghana has always shown leadership in Africa. And for me, the greatest, at this point, I'm beginning to miss Comrade Mugabe, you know. I'm wondering if it was Mugabe, for instance, that was confronted with such a question, the response that he would have given. So I think that it was sad commentary that our president did that, and for people to come and be telling us that our president doesn't understand good English and that they understand good English and can do better interpretation of what the president has said is even more sadder. I want to pray and hope that when given a similar opportunity, our president will be clearer. We may be poor. Indeed, we are not even poor, because the president himself admits that Ghana is not poor. Maybe it is Ghanaians who are poor, but Ghana is not poor, because we have everything that should make us rich. The president himself alluded to this and said, Sikano Waha. Our vice president indicated that having worked with the Bank of Ghana, he is very much aware that the money is here. There's no need to borrow. So I'm saying that if we decide in the face of such huge resources to be poor, we cannot go and turn our back for a mess of potash and agree to rights that will ensure a decay in our country. I say even Donald Trump has said that the military, if you are a gay or a lesbian in the military, the state will not use its money to pay for your health bills. You do that at your own risk. I'm saying even Donald Trump, because all of us know what he represents in world affairs. You understand? He has stated it. Because the health bill associated with robbing people's anus is too much for the American government to bear. President Nana Akufo-Addo, in the face of our dilapidation and non-existent health facilities, you are calling on gays and lesbians to increase momentum so that their issues can be discussed and their rights can be granted. This is shameful for the nation Ghana.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bernard Mona, for your submission. You are still here on Radio Gold 90.5 FM. This is Alhaji and Alhaji, the mother of all talk shows. We have 5 more minutes before we hit the hour 10. If you just join us, you are welcome. This morning, we are interrogating the issues of President Akufo-Addo's interview on Al Jazeera and the comments he made with respect to homosexuality. Also, are we focusing our attention on an analysis at the modern day slave trade in Libya and what the UN, AU and ECOWAS must do to curtail such development in the future. Good morning, Alhaji.
Good morning, Sami. Let me say good morning to Comrade Bernard Mona, to your good self and the technicians here, as well as all the listeners of radio groups across the world. Let me also, I've always said that you must have heard before you can chew corn. It's because of the good people of Sanargo constituency that I'm here. I can never forget it at any point in time to salute them for their bleachisy in Dagbani and their forthrightness and dignity. I say good morning to all of them. Sami, let me, like Comrade Bernard Mona started, also say something small about our farmers. I mean, Sami, before you undertake any event, you must eat. I think that is the first thing that anybody does before you gather the requisite level of energy to do anything. And so, on this occasion of the Farmers' Day yesterday, I want to take the opportunity to salute our gallant farmers for having kept this nation on its feet. Indeed, many people at various times have complained and taken actions and even embarked on demonstrations. But in spite of the very serious things done against our farmers, against the interests of farming as a profession, farmers have never thrown down their tools and indicated that they are going to withdraw their services to the state and by extension prevent us from getting food to eat. So I want to take this opportunity to salute them and to urge that they continue to remain steadfast in the bid to win us our independence. Sami, a man who has his mouth in another man's kitchen cannot assert his independence and freedom. If you have a penchant of parasiting food every day, go and find out whether when you sit with your host, and your host says that this is black, you can say it's white. You even as you see it to be white, you can't say so, for the fear of the rumblings that your stomach could remind you about. And so it is one of the most important areas I believe this country should have devoted a lot of resources to our farmers, to making sure that our farmers get the best. And I in my debate on the floor of the House in Parliament, I tried to point out, especially in this year, the budget that has been allocated, the resources allocated to farmers, in spite of so many talk about going for food and jobs and all those things. You see that the allocations to the economic ministries, which includes the Ministry of Agriculture, are down. Less and less resources are getting to some of these important areas, and we are offloading a lot of these resources into the Office of Government Machinery. This year, for instance, the Office of Government Machinery is getting, that is under the presidency, 3.411 billion Ghana cedis, while the entire economic ministries, which includes the Ministry of Agriculture, all these other ministries, about 7 of them, the total is just about 1.8 billion Ghana cedis. So you see often where our priorities are. And so I think that it is not good enough for us to continue along this path. One other certain directly related to this Farmers' Day, Sammy, is that the 2016 Best Farmer, as we speak now, information available indicates that the decision has not been honored. The price and the other things that were supposed to accord him as a result of the declaring him the best farmer for 2016 national farmer, best national farmer, has not been honored. And I think it's a shame that we should we are now even playing politics with this very important institution that we have all put together as a nation. So you know that the Farmers' Day, I think it was done on December 2nd. Is it December 2nd or 3rd? Before we voted on December 7th. And since power change hands, nothing has been done for to honor this outstanding obligation we had in respect of the national farmer, best farmer. And I think that we should rectify this shame and not also make the best farmer institution a politics of football we are going to play around. So that this issue that we all know government is a continuum, and so you come and you make sure that whatever obligations are there, you do it. We don't let the farmer suffer for this part. I think it will send a very bad signal to our farmers that they have become an object of politics, and we decide to choose and play who becomes the best farmer and how he's attained. I think that it's not acceptable. So, having said that, let me come on to the main issue that you have today. I have said it without equivocation that, Sammy, no matter how tall, you can be as tall as a pole. You can't see tomorrow. It is one of the things Almighty Allah, Almighty God, has pushed at a partition between man and himself. The ability to see. None of us in this studio can tell in all certainty what can happen in the next 5 seconds, in the next 10 seconds, in the next 1 minute, in the next 1 hour, in the next 1 day, in the next 1 week, in the next 1 month. So none of us has the capacity to say with certainty. At best you can guess, but your guess can fly out of the window in no time. So it is only the Almighty Allah who knows, the Almighty God, who has the power to know, to decipher. The Almighty God, in his infinite wisdom, Sammy, is the only person who also has infinite wisdom to know things from their very beginning, their very conception, to their very end. And so can tell exactly what has to happen. And so the Almighty God, in his infinite wisdom, decided that procreation is by means of a man and a woman. Full stop. It is abundantly clear that procreation can only take place between a man and a woman. I'm very happy Comrade Benamona alluded to this aspect by saying that you can lock 2 men in a room for, if they can even live for 100 years, wait and see whether the procreation can take place. Or you lock 2 women and see whether there can be procreation. Procreation is a basis for a peaceful cohabitation between a man and a woman. And so if the Almighty God in his infinite wisdom has put this together, who is man to begin to determine other ways of bringing about cohabitation of same-sex races? I think that is an exercise in futility. It is no accident that both the Bible and the Quran explicitly regard homosexual activity, that is same-sex relationship, as an abomination. I'm sure you are Christians. You know the relevant portions of the Bible that allow it, and I know that it is there explicit in the Bible that homosexual activity is not permissible in the eyes of the Almighty. But I know for the Quran, it's one of the greatest abominations, that the Almighty Allah is a very forgiving God. That is why we call him Ar-Rahman. His Rahmah, his mercy unto man is very elastic. But it's made it clear that as far as issues like homosexuality are concerned, Almighty Allah frowns on it with anger, and I can't mention it. And Sami, in Surah to Hud, that is chapter 11 of the Quran. Chapter 11 of the Quran, he has made it clear that this deviance has no place. And Sami, if you were to look at chapters, Surah to Hud, verses 76 up to 83, it spells out clearly the abomination, what Allah regards as an abomination, and what punishment awaits people who indulge in that practice. Sami, in fact, in the time of Prophet Lot, people who indulge in this particular thing evoke the wrath of Almighty Allah, to the point that those people, the punishment was to capsize the earth under them, bury them, and all manner of retribution was done to them for indulging in this act that I'm talking about, this calamitous act. So in Islam, there is no trifling. There is no iota of room left for homosexual activity, same-sex activity. It's not permitted 1 inch. And so that's why when Comrade Bernard Mona talked about reaction of civil society, reaction of our religious establishment, because like I've said, Christians don't tolerate it. Muslims don't even. Worse. Sami, the saying that if you deliberately embellish irrelevance, you will mean what you have not said. You see, why a leader must always speak with clarity is that, Sami, after you have spoken, you give finality to everything that has been said, and it is decided, a clear direction would have been given as to where the nation stands in respect of that particular matter. After you've spoken, there should be no ambiguity about what the position of the nation is. Sami, when I first heard that somebody called me and told me that this is what His Excellency the President is said to have indicated in an interview with Al Jazeera, I didn't believe it until I went to listen to this thing myself. And Sami, it's incredible. I know President Nana Addo as one of the most matured politicians in this country. Sami, having been in frontline politics for more than 30 years. I also know that his diction, his capacity to choose words to reflect what he wants to say, it's not questioned. Because he's a very intelligent person, very experienced. and capable of knowing in what situation to catch what words to suit the occasion. So I have no doubt, Sammy, that from the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaketh. Let me say for the records that this is not the first time presidents of this republic have had to contend with situations of this homosexual issue in the ranks of the International Committee of Nations. As Comrade Benamona pointed out, even dating as far back as President Rawlings in the first government of the Fourth Republic, through to what he narrated about President Kufuor's time, to President Atta Mills. Sammy, this was not an interview with a reporter. In the case of President Mills of blessed memory, it was even from David Cameron, the British Prime Minister. And Sammy, one of the things the West does is to be able to use the instrument of aid and other things to twist arms of third world governments in the developing countries, to twist their arms to accept certain policies, otherwise they would not, on account of the fact that they think their nations are hungry, they need aid, and so they dangle the aid in front of you and ask you comply with ABCD. Go and comply, and like in the case of President Atta Mills at that time, to ask Ghana to make an opening for this homosexual activity to gain a foothold in Ghana. Sammy, it was direct face-to-face with the leader of one of those countries supporting this moribund and bankrupt culture practice. Sammy, President Mills did not mince words. He said it in the face that as long as he remained president, that evil practice will never see the light of day in Ghana. Forthright, straightforward, uncompromising language. Sammy, there's no diplomacy when you are dealing with evil. It's straightforward. You make your position very clear. That is one of the areas you are either for it or you are against. There's no middle path. There is no way to wangle with diplomacy in this matter. And so President Mills said it direct and forthright. When it came to President John Dramani Mahama, similarly, he made it very clear. He is a president presiding, is a democratically elected president presiding over affairs on behalf of the good people of this country. Almost exclusively, the good people of this country have indicated their abhorrence for this evil practice. And so, as a president who asks for and speaks for on behalf of the people, there was no way he was going to grant any space for this matter to have any foothold in Ghana. He also made it very clear. So the simple question to ask is that, how come even in an interview, not even at a forum where you are facing your fellow heads of state, but even in an interview where you have the option and even a freer atmosphere to choose proper words to reflect the occasion, our president chose to dabble in this kind of language, to say that homosexuality and legalizing homosexuality is bound to happen. Sammy, me and you have also gone to school. If somebody says it's bound to happen, how else would anybody understand bound to happen? Bound to happen is that it's a matter of time, it will come. Is there any interpretation you can give to that differently? People should stop. When something is wrong, it's wrong. If it's not said properly, let's grant the opportunity, yes, for the things to be rectified. But let's not seek to justify the untenable. It is not. What makes homosexuality so compulsive that it's bound to happen? Sammy, we saw Ebola, okay, in Sierra Leone, in Guinea. It even came to Cote d'Ivoire, okay. Was it bound to happen in Ghana? Many people thought, having reached Cote d'Ivoire, others, it was going to come to Ghana. It didn't come, Sammy, and that is why I want to point out something very important about this country. Sammy, God Almighty Allah has His hands on this country. God has shown a favor to this country. Many incidents have happened. Sammy, look across the West African sub-region. Which country has not seen turmoil? civil wars, armed insurrection, terrorism, calamities, terrible diseases. Name all of them, Sabi. What has happened in Ghana? God Almighty Allah has spared us. It's because His Rahman is on us. What is the first stanza of our national anthem? God bless our homeland, Ghana, and make our nation. So, Sammy, you see how the Almighty, in His infinite mercy, has bestowed His honor on us. And so, is this a country, Sammy, that when He, the Almighty, has said, don't give a semblance of chance for this evil practice to ever take place in your place? We would have our president tell us that this thing is inexorable. It is bound to happen. And something worse from that the reason why it is not happening, a strategy must be given out. He's giving a strategy out for them to look and know that if they are able to get NGOs and civil society that can get up and champion the case, make their voices heard louder, get louder and louder, they will be taken serious and opportunities to be granted for those things to coexist. Incredible, Sammy. I think that the issues could not have been put out more clearer than this, about giving and lending support to homosexual activity. No wonder, Sammy, you've seen within the last 1 week, as Comrade Benamono said, look at the kinds of people, leaders who have visited this country. There are leaders in these countries who are promoting this evil practice in their countries, who have led the way. In fact, I have read on social media and others that even the Luxembourg Prime Minister is a gay. And they even indicated that he came with a gay partner. He came with his wife, who is a man. Sammy, his wife, who is a man. Incredible. That tells us the evil spectre we are facing. So that if you get a congregation of all these peoples coming in the wake of this statement, Kwame, is suggestive of something happening. I've always said that, you see, if you hear the howling of a hyena in your neighborhood and the goat gets missing, Sammy, your guess is as good as mine. We don't ask who caught it. If in the aftermath of this interview we are getting all these visitors, including some of these gay characters, descending on our country, it's a very terrible thing that is coming. And Ghanaians, we better wake up. And I'm happy about the concern Bernard also showed about the lack of forthrightness of our religious leaders in this matter. I have heard the spokesperson of our chief imam, Sheikh Arimiya Swaib, and he spoke very eloquently on the matter. But I think that it's not enough. I think the entire Islamic Ummah must rise up. Sami, we don't owe allegiance just to authority here. It's transient. Our ultimate allegiance is to the Almighty Allah. Tomorrow we shall all answer. When we depart this earth, we shall answer before Him. That when this matter that He has branded evil, that we should not come near, because it's one of the things He detests most. In the name of either false respect for the authority of the state, or from full respect, we rather chose to shelve what He, the Almighty, has decreed upon us to do, and neglected to say the thing as forthrightly as we ought to say it. God Almighty Allah is watching our religious leaders. This is a matter none of them has a luxury to play with. They cannot, on the altar of politics, decide that because it is said by the president or said by somebody, that one holds more sway than their allegiance and their work to Almighty God himself. And that is why I'm saying that Almighty God is watching their conduct. Anybody who chooses to play politics with this matter and not come out to admonish those who say and those who are encouraging such a practice and begin to get Ghanaians sensitized to the need to rise up to work to ensure that this thing never happens, tomorrow they will have very difficult time before the Almighty Allah, before the Almighty God, who they claim has chosen them. Because most of the time when they act, they say they are chosen by God. And when you are chosen by God to do his work, the actions of man should not deter you from doing that work. Whatever trappings or whatever wealth or whatever advantages you seek to get from politicians in order to shelf that work of God, you will leave this earth one day and stand before your maker for accountability. And we will see, Sammy, on that day, how that answers will come when this thing was said. And so, Sammy, I ask myself, how is it that on account of aid, because the Western countries use aid as an instrument to either force our hands to accept certain policies. And as I've demonstrated before, this thing had come before. It had come during the time of President Mills, even as far as to President Roll, during the first part of our Fourth Republic. But these things were categorically rejected. Sammy, we have survived. The Bible says what, Sammy? What does it profit a man? Okay? To gain the world and lose his soul. Sammy, if I've quoted it wrong, you are listening, you can correct me.
You're right. You're right.
So, what will it profit us as a nation? To sacrifice our time-honored values for the pittance of aid. That you say, oh, Italy has given us this, these people are giving us this, these people are giving us, so that our society become as permissive, as perverse as it is, to embrace this moribund culture, this decadent practice. So I think that Ghana is bigger than this. Things can happen in elsewhere. They may happen around and give a semblance that they are coming here by the grace of Almighty Allah. They are not bound to happen here. The president speaking for his party, and I may say it is bound to happen. But by the grace of God, we, and as I'm speaking for the NDC as his communications spokesman, I will say it is never going to happen in this country by the grace of Almighty Allah. Inshallah, inshallah, inshallah. It will never happen. They can say it's bound to happen, but we say it will never happen. So I can say without any iota of doubt that in this current parliament, I know not of any MP who will stand up and support this kind of practice. Assuming in the most unlikely event, anybody even wants to bring such legislation before the House. Because I know even the Right Honorable Speaker himself will not countenance this, let alone even the overwhelming or the entirety of the members of parliament. I'm not even just talking about the minority. Even our colleagues on the other side in the MPP will not tolerate this kind of backward behavior. And so as part of this, I know that in our laws there are indications that people who have a natural carnal knowledge of people is interpreted to mean homosexual activity. But I think, Sammy, it's about time now, especially now with all these statements and all these things coming, and especially where pronouncements are made to the effect that it's bound to happen. Sammy, we should begin to look at it in terms of getting deliberate legislation. And I think that we should, as members of parliament, the difficulty is that it is difficult for a private members' bill to be issued in our parliament. It's a very, very cumbersome, almost impossible process to undertake a private member's bill. But I mean, I would have championed that bill. And I think that this is important for all of us as a nation to begin to mount pressure. So if there was any pressure that should be mounted, it's not pressure that should be mounted for government to legalize homosexuality. It should be pressure that should be mounted for government to put in legislation to stop homosexuality from ever getting any root in this country. So I mean, that is the right pressure to mount. And so the religious leaders in this country should not be limiting themselves to the collection of tithes and others. Sami, this is the action that today they must move to initiate. So that once we have a law that makes it abundantly clear that this form of activity is completely and totally unacceptable to Ghanaians, we would like it. Sami, like he said, as if he took the words from my mouth, I miss Robert Mugabe. And just like even we discussed in the statement of African Union, you saw how the African Union leaders sat down for Europeans who are largely complicit in what has happened to us. Not only the first slave trade, but this thing that has happened in the overthrow of Gaddafi. It is these same powers who were complicit in the overthrow of Gaddafi. They sat down in Cote d'Ivoire. They were lectured. They were just sitting down like, I don't know what to say, Sami. I have to restrain myself. Otherwise, the language. Look, for them to be lecturing them, the same people who are complicit in this criminal acts that led to the overthrow of Gaddafi and the unleashing of this thing on Libya. We are coming to that, Sami. Yeah. But I know it is important for the good people of this country. At the end of the day, it is Ghanaians. It is us as Ghanaians who will determine whether something will happen here or it will not happen. And given that the overwhelming majority of Ghanaians don't want to see this practice, Sami, we already are on the side of the strength of ensuring that no such thing happens. But you see, Sami, no matter how handsome you are, you still need a bath. You still need to bath.
Yeah.
Notwithstanding our numbers and our strength, we must not sit down and take things for granted. Because for all you know, like I'm saying, look at the influx of these people. What they are bringing. The kinds of people they will allow into the country to begin to infiltrate our institutions. Like Comrade Benamona said, in some of these institutions, they are trying to catch even our young people, our innocent children and others who are in first or second circle institutions. And you go to the tertiary institutions, they are beginning to recruit people to engage in these evil practices. So I mean, we must all wake up.
All right.
And wage an unrelenting crusade against this practice. It is true that, Sami, this statement is most unfortunate because, as the saying goes, when a chief goes for a weird haircut, he bemuses his subjects.
All right.
What else would the ordinary people do? Hearing some of these things, especially if they take inspiration from the words of leadership.
Right.
I think it is important that all of us, and particularly our religious establishment, speak louder and very clearly on this matter,
right,
without recourse to their own inherent interests they want to protect and the fear that they would incur the wrath of a political establishment. The wrath of Almighty God is worse than the wrath of a political leader here, who himself will be answerable to the Almighty God on the day of judgment. So, Sami, I say that this is the time God will watch to see whether they are actually doing the work for which they say He has appointed them. We are watching and we will see what happens.
Thank you very much, Alhaji A.B. Fuseni, for your submission. I'll come straight to Dr. David Percy. Doc, good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, good morning.
Tell them to learn how to wake up early.
There are many things that keeps one from getting here early. But anyway, good morning again. This morning I'll have to speak, as I usually do, very frankly. and as a socialist. We have a storm on our hands because of statements that President has made in an interview on Al Jazeera. Speaking in general terms and saying what he said was merely stating the truth about social change. Speaking what he said, saying what he said, well, he was merely stating a general truth about social change. That changes in society happen because people's positions and views change over time in response to many pressures. So, for instance, 600 years ago, if you said that the earth was not flat, in opposition to the doctrine of the Catholic Church, you would have been put, in fact, it was a capital offense, you would have been put to death. Now, all of us in our lifetimes can speak to changes that have come about. I don't know whether you know the what the Ghans call boué, or amwansi. I think it's amwansi in Akan. Okay, it's an item of clothing that is particular to women. Growing up as a kid, the parts in Accra and in rural Ghana where you went, where people, the only item of clothing that women, the only item of clothing that they had was boué or amansi. Today, it will be unimaginable to see anyone in public dressed only in amansi, and so on and so forth. Just over a century ago, maybe even less, there are parts of our country where people went about publicly naked. So what the president said was merely a reflection of social change. That it gets with time, things develop and things move on. I mean, I could give any number of additional examples. Growing up as a kid in Accra, if you sold frozen fish, for instance, nobody would touch it. Frozen fish. Nobody would touch it. It was unnatural, unusual. It meant that something bad had happened to the fish. Okay, today nobody questions the usefulness of frozen fish. In fact, if you're looking for fresh fish, you may have to struggle to find it. And just a personal example, that comes to mind. Just about 6 years ago. Okay. My daughter, and she was an adult then. Asked me, she saw cube sugar, right? And she asked, what is this? Cube sugar. And that really, really startled me. Remembering that among one of the sins of Nkrumah, for which he had to go, was the fact that Ghanaians had been forced to use granulated sugar, what was then called Congo sugar, in place of their favorite Tate and Lyle. So what our president said about things bound to happen was merely a statement of truth. You may shake your head, Alhaji, but that's the truth. What he said about is a general theory of social change. That things change, because people in society have moved along. And he spoke about the situation in the UK maybe decades back when he was a younger person who was a student. So in general terms, our president is not wrong. The problem is that our president has proven himself as one of the most unprincipled politicians. If there's a problem with what he said, it's a problem that our president has proven himself to be one of the most unprincipled politicians who has never shown the courage to stand up for what he believes or what he says he believes, not in the violence in the MPP, which he used as a tool for taking charge of that party, not in the violence unleashed by the paramilitary that he assembled as part of his key strategy to win power. Now, if our president is saying what he said, knowing the context and previous positions of what has been said, it has to be because he's being seriously pushed. Not by Ghanaians, by other powers. Of course, if there's going to be any change that's going to happen in our country, it will happen because Ghanaian lawmakers decide so. I mean, I'm talking about the position of the law, right? But you realize that, except occasionally, very rarely do you even have anyone being prosecuted for homosexual acts. Okay. Now, I disagree with my friends Bernard and when they say that homosexuality is first and foremost a threat to our survival as a species. It is not. It is not and cannot be. It's a minority problem. Homosexuals are a minority in our population. And homosexuality itself is a consequence of genes, hormones, and choice. But first and foremost, speaking about homosexuals, you're talking about rights of a minority. Rights, human rights of a minority. Okay? And there are all kinds of minorities. Religious minorities, ethnic minorities, you can name them. Okay. So, speaking from the standpoint of someone who pushes at every stage for equal rights and opportunities, I have no difficulty if others have a different sexual orientation. They don't threaten me, but they are not a threat to society. But homophobia, like the other phobias, is part of the politics of identity. It's part of the politics of bigotry. It's part of the politics of prejudice. And politicians everywhere have lined up and used these as tools for their rise to power and for maintaining power. And one can name any number of examples, including our president himself. Right? He's spoken to his party as being an account party. What was he talking about? Okay? He's spoken about the right of he supported the illiterate statement by the senior minister before he was appointed. That only those with resources? Resource rich. You'll be surprised that someone who is supposed to know about the economy can speak about any part of our country that's not resource rich. The fundamental resource, the first resource, is land. I don't know of any peoples or any parts of our country where you have peoples without land. So for anybody to speak this way, first of all speaks to his lack of education about what the economy is. But back to my subject. It's about the politics of ignorance. It's about politics of identity. It's about politics of bigotry. It's about politics of prejudice. More fundamentally, what it does is to pit one section of the working peoples against another. Okay? In our country, I could list any number of them. The one that comes to mind, I hope I'm not wrong, is, for instance, the one you find in the Upper East. I don't know the state of that issue now. Between the, I don't want to misname the group, but if you remember, there was a problem in the area that Mama Yariga comes from, between one group and another. Okay? And in this country, you could list any number. If you go around the world, there are thousands. So it pits one working man who happens to speak one language, who happens to have a different religion, or have a different sexual orientation against another. And this is a diversion. But you see, this business of dividing up and pitting one section of working people against another is a key part for retaining power for the minorities that control our societies. How else can they keep power but to keep the majority divided on, quote-unquote, non-issues? Whether it's about the God you worship, the language you speak, which part of the country you come from, your sex, your race, your skin color. From tackling the fundamental problem in all our countries, in all our societies. We'll be speaking very soon about the issue of migration, immigration, right? Very soon. Together with that and other crises, they all reflect fundamentally the crisis of the socio-economic model that we are operating, not just in Ghana, but globally. That is capitalism, which is founded on inequality, on exploitation, oppression, which leads directly to poverty, to violence, and war. So, for me, except for the fact that it gets our politicians and our religious leaders and our working people worked up, okay, and the fact that it acts as a distraction from the key social tasks that need to be addressed. That of addressing the issue of the division in society between a few people who have everything and the many who must slave and labor for them. It adds up to the many diversions, okay, from the soap operas that you have on television, okay, to the pursuit of miracles that you find and the doctrine of prosperity that says that, look, just give to the pastor and you'll be rewarded. Yours will be a miracle, which fuels this belief that it is possible to deal with the problems of society without sweat, without pain. All you have to do is to pray and hope for a miracle and keep your pastor happy. So these are all, in a certain sense, reflections of this crisis. So the energies of our working people are channeled into fights among themselves. After all, what any two people do behind closed doors, two consenting adults do behind closed doors, cannot be my business. Cannot be a threat to me. It cannot be a threat to society's existence. But it can get people very worked up to the point of violence and even genocide. And that has been demonstrated. In this studio, in the conversations that have happened since our president made his statement, and the various attempts to interpret what he meant. But he spoke very plain language. And as I said, as a student of history, of society, social development generally, I cannot disagree with what he said, that it is bound to happen. Why will it happen? Because enough people in society have come to a point where they realize that this is not a problem. And that's what has happened with all kinds of change. From the time when people would never take frozen fish. I don't know whether you know that. Growing up as a kid in Accra, nobody would touch frozen fish. It was unnatural. Frozen fish, it means that something very bad must have happened. Today, frozen fish is commonplace. Okay, I've already alluded to the example of my daughter who asked, "What is this?" The first time she saw cube sugar. Then I realized that, since my days as a kid and going through Mfanspim, when one of the reasons for which Nkrumah was overthrown was that economic conditions had gotten so bad that Ghanaians had to use not the cube sugar, the Tate and Lyle that they knew, not even St. Louis sugar, which was our inferior in terms of cube quality, but granulated sugar. Was one of the many reasons why Nkrumah had to go. So, speaking about social change, like I said, our president is not wrong. Okay? You can list there's thousands of examples of changes that have happened before our very eyes. Okay? You can go back to the revolution of the motor car, where the privileged in society were driven around in carriages by horses. So the most oppressive laws were made against the use of motor cars. Today, nobody talks about that. But you can list any number of things that you think have become very useful and revolutionary in society. Every one of them had to fight for its existence against something that existed before, to which it posed an existential threat. But the truth is that homosexuality, historically, has been with all societies. You can go as far back in history as you want to. It does not stop modern politicians from milking it, whether for or against, but primarily to divert our attention from the most essential tasks, addressing the problems of inequality that leads to poverty, that drives conflict, that leads to war. For me, those are the central issues that we must focus on.
Sammy,
Thank you very much, Dr. Percy.
Just briefly, I respectfully disagree with Comrade Percy.
Okay.
It's not every social phenomenon that manifests into an attribute of social change. It doesn't. Even by the laws of social revolution, it's not. Because it is a function of what society perceives at any point in time to be a value that is worth embracing. And it is abundantly clear. Because if he says that what predictions the president made in respect of the fact that is something bound to happen, it's not every social phenomenon that manifests into social change. It doesn't. So things can happen in one society, and in another society where you have reason to believe that it will manifest, it will not work out. And besides that, Sammy, I'm wondering how the issue of procreation, like Comrade Bernard Mana talked about, the basis for human evolution and progress is procreation. I'm wondering how Dr. Percy would address the issue of procreation under a homosexual dispensation. How is that going to happen?
Yeah, but is that not the point where he made the emphatic classification about they being a minority?
No, I'm just even asking that, assuming that one manifests into law and becomes an established practice in society and gains roots and they become the majority.
Okay.
How does society proceed to procreate and make progress in the future?
All right, this is not usually how the show is done, but let me give Doc the opportunity to at least clarify.
Your show would grow if you allow this kind of this thing.
Yeah, but make the point. He's raised some concerns about your submission.
You see?
But I don't think it's finished.
Okay.
You see, I think there are many issues that one can bring to bear on this issue. But clearly for me, I'm saying that, you see, Sammy, you cannot, especially as a leader, divorce yourself from critical and sensitive issues that affect your society. And so in addressing those key sensitive issues in your society, you should be very conscious of the interests and aspirations of the overwhelming majority of your people. It cannot be. And that's why I gave you even examples during my presentation. That the fact that certain things could have happened in some areas, and then that leads you to predict that it inexorably will happen in your country. It comes to pass that they don't happen.
Like Syria, everybody expected,
that following what has happened to have taken swept Assad away. So I'm just putting some of these things together. That I have no dispute with the theorists and this in the position Dr. Percy. All of us as socialists have at one time or another looked at it. But in the specific issue of this matter, I'm sure it is one of those areas where those laws don't apply.
All right. Now, Doc, yes. I'm going to give you the opportunity to respond. Bernard, if what you are going to say is in support of what Alhaji is saying,
I think you should allow
or it's a diverse view from that of Dr. Percy, then I can...
No. Yes, he has the right to.
First, one must take from the position that Dr. Percy is coming from.
Okay.
That he's talking about social change. And that social changes are often occasioned by some mobilization of some sort. And therefore, he does not disagree with the president when the president says that it's a matter of time. But he does not see that current around this particular event. And the president giving some clues as to how proponents of homosexual rights can get people's attention is that there must be some currents, there must be some agitation, there must be some mobilization. Dr. Percy said that he doesn't see anything wrong with that. I agree that if he is agreeing to the president's statement that there must be some mobilization to occasion a change, yes, mobilizations and agitations have occasioned change. The kind of changes that we are talking about are changes that affect the constructs that we are dealing with. First, the anus is not a natural passage for sex. I have not heard that a woman is discharging uncontrollably through the vagina because of sex. But we have heard men discharging uncontrollably through the anus because of sex. We have seen the dangers, the huge medical expenditure, and all that. And if today we are saying that go out there and ensure that we increase medical bill, will ensure that society is damaged because it is a social change. This is not the kind of social changes that people mobilize around. The other thing that we must all appreciate, Dr. Percy, minorities have become majorities in some instances. I don't want to cite examples from Nigeria, but we have seen small groups. Because restrictive measures are not put in place, they become bigger. Because of the kind of indoctrination, the kind of resources that is at the disposal, and in a materialistic world that we have, if people can easily give in to all manner of material motivations, then we should be careful. If I show you some video that I have on my phone, you begin to wonder. Kids,
Yeah.
2 boys.
Yeah.
I'm sure you might have come across that video.
Quite explicit. Yeah.
That is the kind of thing that we are talking about. So, Dr. Percy, some of the examples, look, tobacco. Why are restrictive measures being put in place now? Cigarette. Why are restrictive measures being put in place now? Because it is harmful. Yet people have a right. Actually, people have a right to even, because if I decide that I want to be a murderer, I should be given the right to go and murder. There should be a social revolution that, look, people who are sadists, who want to go out there, they should be given the chance to go and do whatever they want to do. They must be granted their rights. So it is not everything that people do that must be granted a right. And in this particular instance, let's not rationalize the issue of homosexuality on the basis of a social change. I can't put it together, honestly.
Dr. Percy, respond within 5 minutes for me, and then let me read a few text messages and we move
Well,
on to our next topic.
I don't think that we need to belabor the point. He says that he has no problem with a statement about social change and mobilization. How can there be an argument about this or any other matter if we agree that changes happen in society as a function of change perceptions, numbers in society who hold a certain view? I give a whole list of examples. Things that happen in my own lifetime. Okay? I don't know whether you know. I was making the point. I think you briefly went out of the studio. But growing up as a kid, you know the thing that the guys call bue, amonsi. Huh? In many societies, in many rural societies, it was the only item of clothing for many women, especially in the fishing communities. Not too long ago. Today you don't find it. You understand? No, you will not find it. How has it happened?
Society has evolved.
People have moved along. Okay? Now, we can get trapped in the backward politics of division on quote-unquote non-material issues. And I can list a whole lot of them. From religious orientation to skin color, language, region, gender. I mean, all kinds of stuff. In the end, the most important thing that they do is to divide and pit the working people against each other on issues that are emotive, very difficult to address rationally, but which only end up maintaining and continuing their misery. Because it divides them, it puts them against each other on issues that are quote unquote non-material. They have little to do with whether they will feed today, whether they have a job, but they have a house over their heads, a roof over their heads. Over the glaring inequalities, that means that the many slave for the few. He does nothing to address that, which is the most fundamental problem, as far as I'm concerned. It's a diversion.
All right. Let's move on.
It doesn't matter how much we work ourselves up. It's a diversion.
Let's move on, Doc. And you just joined us. This is Alhaji and Alhaji. Very interesting, this matter. So you can imagine how the week has been discussing this matter of homosexuality per the interview His Excellency the President.
If I may just add a point, important as it is, because you are a station, you also have to earn your keep. Okay. Of course, this thing comes up regularly about how much, because airtime is a very limited resource. Okay, so whilst we spend the past week and maybe this coming week, okay, on this matter, there are many matters that require attention that go unaddressed. Okay, many matters. I'm not saying that it's not important because we should not speak about it. It's important for people's understanding and education so that we know where to channel our energies and our our enthusiasm. Okay, otherwise all we do is end up fighting each other, dividing our forces, when we should focus on the main enemy, and the main enemy is inequality.
All right, yes. Dr. Percy, thank you for that submission. Let me read.
So you see, Dr. Percy doesn't contradict again, because there are real enemies. Homosexuality is not one of the issues.
It looks like we're not moving off this subject anytime soon, but let me read a few of the text messages that have come through. The view of the listeners also form a very important part of discussion, and this one from Starring Wendell says, Efo Ishen, the president's stance on gays and lesbians is very nebulous. He must come clear without equivocation on homosexuals, because our culture as Africans abhors it. Nanado's vague posture on such practices is bound to affect the sensibilities of most Ghanaians. Our traditionalists abhor it, and that's your view on the show this morning. John Amache sends the message, please, greetings. Please tell Dr. Percy that social change, yes, for better things and better lifestyle, but not for something that we think is evil. And please tell Dr. Percy that his analogies don't hold water. That your view. Dennis Akote sends the message. As a Catholic, I agree with Bernard. Indeed, the position of the Catholic Church on homosexuality, notwithstanding the insistence of the Church to show mercy to such people, is clear, and it's unfortunate that the Catholic Bishops' Conference, that strangely took on former President Mahama on his compassion argument relative to the Gitmo 2, has not issued a statement on this slip by President till now. Homosexuality is a mental disorder, a pseudo-value inconsistent with the universal minimal core values that cuts across all cultures, and it must not be sanctioned to enter the public space. Dr. Percy, on the other hand, did rather an academic exercise with the issue, which for me is flawed with his analogies vis-a-vis the historical context of the subject matter. God help us all. Shalom. And that's from Dennis Yakote. It's been a long time, Dennis. I read your message. This one from Professor Kwame Aristocrat. He says, Mr. Shen, you don't legalize something which is illegal and a taboo in our country. This is simple logic. And again, God's rules are superior to any earthly laws called human rights. The Western world has started penetrating African countries to ours are eminent leaders like Gaddafi and Mugabe based on little pressure from their citizens. So if Nanado assures the same international communities that legalization of homosexuality is bound to happen, Ghanaians give him pressure, then we must condemn it and ask him to state his position on homosexuality. Professor Aristocrat Kwame sending that through. Musa Abatwa in Kumasi says, it's worrying when President Akufo-Addo failed to make a categorical statement that homosexual is uncultured. Therefore, we won't tolerate it. That Amen Act in Ghana, as his predecessors did. Polygamy has been made illegal in the West, yet they want us to legalize homosexuality, which has always been wrong. And that Musa Abatwa AU Farouk sends the message on Facebook. Good morning to you, Hashem, and to your able panelists. Ghana is not ready for homosexuality. The president must take a second look at this decision to legalize gayism in the country. Ghana is a religious state, and we Muslims are calling on the Vice President, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, to state his position on the homosexual issue. And Stephen Kwabnatu on Facebook finally says, on the issue of the rights of homosexuality in Ghana, I was scandalized that our president doesn't seem to have any strong position on the matter. The subsequent attempt to claim that this government is not for its legalization upon the bound to happen comment, I ask, why must a president who thinks homosexuality is wrong project that it will be right in the future, hence this is bound to happen? If something is wrong, you condemn it, including future attempts to make it right. You don't lead its rightness in the future if you don't believe in it. And those are a few text messages on Facebook. Let me read out a few tweets that have come through as well. This one from Vincent Saki. Okay, let me read that from D'Souza Wogbeyi. Sorry, he says, somebody please ask Comrade Percy a direct question for me. Would he sit aloof as his son is being brainwashed into sodomy? That's a question for you, Dr. Percy. D'Souza again goes on to say, ask Comrade Percy, what if a 50-year-old man's preference is a 6-year-old daughter? Would he be cool with that? Vincent N. Saki says, Samuel Alhaji ABF Hussein is discussing this homosexuality issue too religiously. I needed him to talk about the adverse effects of this madness without being too religious. Gayism and lesbianism will not happen in Ghana, though. Patrick Aaron mentioned you. He tweets and says, Nana and Bawumia should marry themselves at the Flags Harbor. Samira and Rebecca should do same and leave Ghanaians alone. Delanyo Agbe says our president wasn't bold enough to declare his stance on LGBT. He was rather engaged in giving out strategies. Very sad. Hadi Ahmed sends the message. According to the president, if the agitation became strong enough, he would have no problem bowing for it. He just invited them to start instigating the agitation with their financial muscle. Allah save Mother Ghana. Charles Avaga says, Sam, can you imagine the whole government moving from one point to the other just to please their master? There's one from Lucy Kwao. Lucy says, Sam, it's always great to listen to you. Your flow and your command over the language is so solid. I'm tuning and listening to you now. And finally, this I believe is in connection with our next topic we're going to treat. And so I'll hold on to the text of Michael Ofori, who sent that message through on WhatsApp. This one from Kuyochimbuafu says, somebody please inform my brother Bernard Mona that he will not hear much of a whimper from the religious bodies, CSOs and opinion leaders about anything this president does. If it was John Mahama, you will have heard a cacophony that will have deafened an owl. Let's keep on keeping on. Fuel that was 16 cities under John Mahama is now 25 cities. No noise. Prince fuel is being distributed by the minister's brother and being diverted with impunity, and there is no whimper. Where is the leadership of Occupy Ghana? Busy dining with the president whilst Ghanaians suffer. But hey, this is Ghana. This is what Ghana wanted. Don't be mistaken about the president's intent when he spoke about the gay matter. He didn't want to upset his Western friends. Those are a few of the messages that I've managed to come through this morning on the show. We'll move on to our second topic, which has to do with the slave trade in Libya as exposed more by the BBC, the expectations we have of the UN, the AU and ECOWAS, and how Ghana is going to bring Ghanaians stranded in Libya to Ghana. Doc, you want to make a point before we move on to our next subject? So I will start with you. I'll start with you on this matter, and then you can chip in your point before you move on to the next matter.
Well, we're mixing up so many things that it becomes difficult to proceed logically and rationally. Now, one of your texters spoke about a 50-year-old having sex with a 6-year-old. Yeah. We know that's criminal.
Yeah.
Okay. It is not about the type of sex, but the fact that you're talking of a relation between an adult and a minor. Okay. I made a very simple point that I have no problem with what any consenting adults, two or more, do privately. I have no problem. And I don't think that the law of the state must intrude. Okay? Now, if any two heterosexual couples were to have sex in public, they'll be arrested. Not because they'll be arrested, because they are breaking the law in terms of what is it? There's a phrase they use for it.
Indecent exposure.
Yes, public moral. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So let's not confuse the issues. Let us not confuse these issues at all. If two generally, as a position, what two consenting adults or more do privately between themselves is their business. It's not the business of the state. It's not the business of the law. All the issues that have been raised about this, Bernard spoke about some consequences that may happen, are issues of health. Much like the problem of alcohol or tobacco or even drugs. They are issues first and foremost of health. You understand? And that's how I would approach them. Because otherwise, if you are going to take this thing to its logical conclusion, what are you going to do to them? Exterminate them? You must.
Nobody has said that.
No, hold on.
Let him make his point.
Hold on. And every one of us knows that people who have homosexual tendencies exist in all our societies. They have been with us throughout history. They are not an invention of me. Right? But I'm saying that it is possible to get ourselves worked up, caught up in the politics of identity, to divert energies and attention from the most fundamental issues, material issues. Whether we have access to land, whether we have a job, whether we have food to eat, whether we have a place to lay our heads. Those are the most fundamental issues. Who is sleeping with whom, who is having sex with whom, and through what agency? Okay, if they are adults, is not really one of my issues. Cannot be. It's a diversion, it's a waste of energies.
All right.
Now, but of course, nothing stops it being exploited for political advantage. My problem with our president and his party, okay, and there's some of the people who are trying to explain what he meant when he spoke in very plain language, is that they have been unprincipled. And the text that Kwadwo sent in just speaks to that. Okay? He said that you're not going to hear a whimper from the religious bodies. Why? Because their class has won. That is the most important. If you got fooled into thinking that they were speaking because they were neutral, then you are the fool. And throughout history, at least throughout modern history, people have been and will continue to be fooled until they learn that behind every statement, every slogan, every pastoral letter, is the interest of one class or another. Now, all the agents of the MPP, from the people in so-called civil society, will speak differently now.
All right, Doc, you have some 7 more minutes to talk about the AU matter. It looks like we are dragging with this issue of homosexuality because I would have to allocate 2020 before 12.
It's important for me because of the divisions that it promotes and the energies that it channels wrongly. That's why it's important to me. Now, about the issue of migration, it reflects again the crisis of this dominant socioeconomic model, the dominant political economic model that we have adopted. First of all, it reflects the imbalances in the global economy. Right? What is fueling it? Wars, conflict, inequality. Again, these are also consequences of this political economy that we are operating. Any system that is based on inequality is bound to lead to conflict, is bound to lead to war. People will be forced to move. Okay? Now, I was struck by the fact that, Bernard, I think Bernard had just, was it Bernard or Alhaji spoke about the fact that African leaders sat mute in La Côte d'Ivoire to be lectured by the criminals who unleashed the attack on Gaddafi. And was it just yesterday? I saw on television our president standing beside the French president. Okay? Stand beside the French president, talking about the fact that it is the arms from Libya that have been unleashed on the rest of us following the fall of President Gaddafi, which is driving a lot of the insecurity in our sub-region. He could not speak about the criminal imperial policy of France that led the attack and provided justification for the attack on Gaddafi. He did not find the balls to speak about it. Those are the issues. So when you go down to the roots, like climate change, the problem of global migration, forced movements, okay, displacements are function and are driven by the global political economy that's based on inequality. Simplicity. Which inequality in terms of opportunities, in terms of access to production resources, jobs, and there are many attractions. People here, they are living a very miserable existence. They hear stories about their brothers who have made it perilously through the Sahara. Okay? It might not be a glorified existence where they are. But in relation to quote unquote the hell here, it is preferable. But the hell here is created socially. In fact, heaven and earth are the results of social creations. Right here on earth. Right here on earth. Now, speaking about the previous issue, fortunately, we are not governed by either the Bible or the Quran. We are guided by the Constitution, which speaks a lot about equality. Okay, I'm saying that the most fundamental struggle today is about equality in the area of the economy. Social equality in the area of production. If you address that fundamental problem, all the other problems that you see around us, you begin to address them. Because it lies at their root. It lies at the root. That we live in a finite world. We cannot have infinite production. You cannot have infinite profits. It's not possible. And many persons have made the point that it is possible to address the needs of all humanity. But it's not possible to address the greed of a few. Because there's no limits. That's our needs. I mean, how many beds do you need to sleep in? One. Right? How much food must you consume? Well, of course, you can expand your consumption so that you have obesity, but it's really limited. Okay. So, every time, each occasion, I am for getting back to the real issues, the fundamental issues, and not getting dragged and bogged down by what I consider to be diversions, which can be explosive. It is possible to mobilize people on the basis of irrationality to have a conflagration. Easy to do by statements that religious people make, by statements that various bigots make. It's possible to do that. In the end, it's even profitable. So you find a situation where globally you have proxy wars uprooting whole populations. Now, the criminals who are driving those proxy wars would like to build up fortresses so that people cannot come in. They are driving those wars. If you look at the global migration issue that has become this thing, from here, you have inequalities of opportunities. People look to Europe, they want to go. From the Middle East, wars, Afghanistan, wherever. All these are driven by the crisis that you find in this system. If you want to address them, tackle the central problem. That's what I'll say.
Thank you, Dr. Percy. Let me come to you, Alhaji.
Yeah, Sammy, thank you very much. Sammy, I'm sure Dr. Percy was looking for laws that discriminate against minorities. Just go to many of the Western countries and see the treatment of Islam and Muslims. For instance, polygamy is outlawed. I'm a Muslim. Polygamy is part of my belief and my creed. But if I were a Muslim in any of the Western countries with rights as a citizen or that, you will be prohibited from embarking on that practice because they frown on it and it's not part of their laws. What would one say to that about it? In many of the Western countries, Muslims are a significant minority. They are not just a few numbers in sprinkling. Even some look at even the wearing of headscarves, burqas and others. It has become even my way of dressing even is frowned upon. And legislation has been introduced in Western countries to make those things illegal. So who says that if we find our society to be under the threat of homosexual activity, we cannot do anything about it in terms of law? It's perfectly legitimate. So, we can carry on this debate.
Yeah, but I'll prefer you use the next 8 minutes to do with the ABM matter for me.
So, that is why I started by saying I miss Robert Mugabe. That is why for some of us, Mugabe is an icon in the African Revolution. You go to international, look, if I can bet you, if Mugabe was present in Cote d'Ivoire, I'm telling you, you would have seen a reaction from Mugabe. No way. He will not allow this same complicit Western leaders to come and lecture us. Who are they driving away in the night and is greeting good evening? Who has created the funeral for them to be performing that is not aware? The problems we have in Libya today is because of the forcible overthrow of Colonel Muammar al-Gaddafi. So many people have so soon forgotten that the West mobilized every possible distance, including their aircraft carriers and others, into the Mediterranean. In particular, at that time, President Sarkozy of France. And I was waiting if this French Prime Minister had come to Parliament. Some of us would have gotten up to heckling and ask questions there for even though it would not be allowed. Because France was deeply complicit in what happened in Libya. President Sarkozy was a principal architect in bombing the forces of the Libyan army. Direct, almost there were some days over on an hourly basis, to degrade the capacity of the Libyan army to deal with the rebellion that started against Colonel Gaddafi. Any objective-minded person will tell you that when Muammar Gaddafi was president of Libya, all these ISIS and all those terrible things we are talking about could never even had any foothold in Libya. It was the conspiracy of the West that opened the floodgates to all these evils and terrible things we are seeing in Libya today. So, Sammy, if you are suffering in death, in hell, whom should we blame? Is it not death? If you didn't die, will you go there? If Colonel Gaddafi were not removed, and Gaddafi was the instrument, was the principal character who held Libya together as a monolithic, strong, independent country. Answer me. Ask anybody. In terms of welfare, there was no country, I can even say on the face of this earth, which had welfare, a real welfare state than Libya. Sammy, where housing, you were given a house. When you married, the state will give you a car, give you a house, give you $20,000. And if you brought forth a child, Sammy, you were added $10,000, $15,000 more. Petrol was almost free. You didn't pay for electricity. Sammy, you can count Libya and the Gaddafi. In the West, their countries, they could never do half of that for their citizens. What the Gaddafi did for Libyans, none of the Western countries, even including America, they cannot do 1/4 of that for their citizens in terms of welfare. So on what basis Gaddafi was a dictator? What is dictatorship? Sammy, the sweetness of the pudding is not the aroma. In terms of the political, economic, political and civil rights, they are subservient to economic, social and cultural rights, which is the very existence of people. Talk about the rights of freedom of whatever, to a hungry man who hasn't eaten, who has no food. It pales into insignificance. So it is these forces who are complicit in the overthrow of Gaddafi, who unleashed the Pandora box. And today Libya is a failed state. So if Libya today is a failed state, whom should we blame? Who takes the fundamental responsibility? And that is why I feel so disappointed that at the AU, they couldn't even allow these same forces who engineered and committed these atrocious acts against the people of Libya to come there and lecture them about human rights and whatever was at stake in Libya. Sammy, if you bring firewood infested with ants to your house, don't be surprised if you are visited by lizards. They are complaining that tens and thousands of migrants are trooping to their areas. Hey, they have the right to complain. Who created that problem? Number one, let me even go back to the wider international argument over this. Sammy, there can be no doubt about the fact that everybody will want to be where the pasture is greenest. We are operating under the aegis of an unjust international economic order. An order that results in the net transfer of resources from developing countries to these so-called developed nations. Sammy, that has resulted in the paradox, one of which Dr. Percy referred to. A paradox of Africa being the richest continent, but Africans are the poorest. Can we resolve that apparent contradiction? That you are the richest continent, but your people are the poorest. That is the sum total of the ethos of this economic order. Unjust, unfair. And that milks developing countries. That siphons resources out of developing countries to the developed countries. So if you have an order that does not ensure equity and justice for all participants, and you have a unidirectional flow of resources, so the same way the resources flow, the same way the people will flow. But they are prepared to take the flow of the resources, but they are not prepared to take the flow of the people. Like Samir have been saying, you say, call yourself a devout Muslim. You abhor pork, but you relish pork soup. They don't want Africa's people, but they want Africa's resources. They will take our resources away. So what do we use in Africa to look after our people? So I thought that these are issues that would have engaged the attention of the AU, our leaders. They just assemble in Africa at these summits and do what? What do they go to do there? In this, especially in this particular matter, Libya, it provided an excellent opportunity for African leaders to take the bull by the horns and to let the West understand its own complicity and role in what has happened, especially in this Libya matter. They let it go. That is why I say I miss Mugabe, because Mugabe is one African whose mouth is not in the kitchen of the West. He can speak and speak his mind on this thing. Today in Africa, we don't have men who can stand up and speak. Mugabe and Co were the last bastions of African leaders who could look anybody in the face and speak for Africans and speak about the rights and interests of Africans. Today they are gone. We just have them sitting there at their talking shops to talk about irrelevant matters and come back. So that is why they could put these things there and get away. You see, Sammy, I'm saying that to talk about slavery in this era is so difficult and incomprehensible, and defeats the very sense of African solidarity. So I mean, when Colonel Gaddafi was leader of Libya, I can say without any iota of doubt that he showed solidarity to Africans more than any African head of state. Indeed, there were even African nations who could not pay their subscription at the AU. It was Libya and the Gaddafi which paid for them to fully participate in the deliberations of the AU. There were Africans who ran into difficulties about their economy and others, and especially when it had to do with oil and others. Our case in Ghana is an example. In 1981, after the revolution, the 31st December revolution, and afterwards, Libya helped Ghana with millions of dollars of aid, including oil. No Western country will give you anything for free. Now, even in terms of this, they are even trying to ask us to legalize homosexuality even before they give us money. They are bringing all these kinds of conditions. When under Libya, we had this kind of support from Colonel Gaddafi. And so, Sammy, I want us to look at the issues clearly. Look, the issue of slave trade. Even today, I'm not even still satisfied about the way it was handled. After the abolition of the slave trade, Sammy, the West, as part of the Industrial Revolution they launched, benefited and profited immensely from slave labor. Indeed, there are some financial institutions. Some even trace it back to David and Alexander Barclay and Barclays Bank as being beneficiaries of the slave trade. Today, Sammy, they have not paid a dime. They have not answered responsibly for their acts. Look at the atrocities that were committed against Jews. And when the Israeli state was set up in Palestine, look at the reparations Western nations, some of the Western nations, especially Germany, has paid even for this thing. If you compare what happened to the Jews, it's a minuscule, a small fraction of what has happened to Africans. Yet they are compensating the Jews. They are paying them for whatever is done. Africans, nobody is even talking about reparations for Africa. Nobody. So it's the same predicament we find in ourselves. So today, conditions have been created where it is possible for Africans to do this in themselves again. And like I said, under Gaddafi, this thing would never, nobody would have even dreamt of it. And so, in our respective areas, there were reports that some 3 Ghanaians were also sold into slavery. I've heard strenuous attempts to deny that it has not been so. On other fora, it has been indicated that some Ghanaians were sold, and they cannot even trace them. Sammy, I would expect that by now, we would have summoned the Libyan envoy here to demand direct action and to help us trace those Ghanaians who have allegedly been sold out in slavery. Because it's totally unacceptable. It undermines the solidarity and the unity of purpose Africa should put as one monolithic unit to fight for the redemption of Africa and its interests in the international arena. It doesn't bode well. And so I honestly find a deficit of leadership in this matter. It has not been handled very well at the level of the AU and even at the level of our individual countries. I know that at the moment the situation is not the best in Libya, but there's a semblance, even though there are 2 fundamentally opposed governments, one based in Tripoli and one in Benghazi, all trying to assert their control over Libya. But at least there is a platform on which domestically we can launch that to make sure that our citizens are protected. I heard that with the support of the International Organization of Migration, some 126 Ghanaians were brought home yesterday. But I know there are thousands of Ghanaians in Libya. Sammy, many. And a lot of them could have been caught in the throes of this slave trading. I mean, I looked at some pictures on the social media. No, I think that the treatment is degrading, inhuman. And there are international conventions that frown on the inhumane and indecent, degrading treatment and punishment meted out to people. There's an international convention. And some of it borders on torture. And there's an international convention against torture. That those who engage in that practice can be hauled before the International Criminal Court and dealt with. So, Sammy, I'm sure that what for me is happening in Libya is a huge complicity the West has to answer for. They have no right whatsoever to come and be people lecturing us on issues and developments in Libya in the aftermath or in the post-Gaddafi era. They are squarely responsible, and Africa must bring them to answer. I'm wondering that we in Africa say that our sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity ought to be protected as Africans. But when the West was moving to get Gaddafi out, African leaders remained silent. Indeed, I remember, Sammy, at that time, South Africa was a member of the UN Security Council. South Africa was a member of the UN Security Council. We did not get that concerted effort to get that anti-Gaddafi move taken off. And they allowed Sarkozy to run riots. At that time, I think British Prime Minister Cameron, all of them were complicit in this matter. And today they have the impudence to come and lecture us regarding issues and events in Libya. So I mean, if you sell yourself for halfpenny, you will be bought for nothing. African leaders, it's time they asserted themselves. This pliant attitude of just wanting some pittance of aid, that they will throw some small dollars at you and subjugate you to very unpleasant things, should be a thing of the past. Oh. That is why I said from the very onset that I miss Mugabe. Right. Africa cannot build and safeguard its independence, territorial integrity, and sovereignty if we remain at the beck and call of Western powers who can throw any pittance at us and put conditions, and we will lap it, we'll swallow it hook, line, and sinker.
All right. Thank you very much, Alhaji, for your submission. Mr. Mona.
Just give me 1 second.
All right. Whilst we wait for Mr. Mona to put his thoughts and his data together, I encourage you to send us your comments and your thoughts and your views on the show. Look for us on Facebook and Twitter with the handle at Samuel Ishen GH. We'll be handing you over to the sports team at 12 midday. So do kindly send your comments through. I will read them. We're live on GFM Radio London, Sekpele 104.3 in Likpe, Shine 96.9 in Akachi, Lukusi Radio 96.1, Vet Golokwati, Radio Pando 102.5, Global FM 105.1 in Ho, and SAPS Radio Online. Mr. Mona.
It's always difficult to talk about issues like this, and I'm trying to take a quote from Bob Marley's Redemption song, where he sang, "Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Have no fear for atomic energy, because none of them can stop the time. How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look?" And anytime you have to talk about issues of Africa, you begin to think about Bob Marley, particularly in his Redemption song. You have asked us this morning to analyze critically the modern day slavery or slave trade in Libya and what the UN, AU, and ECOWAS must do to curtail such development in the future. What are we doing now to stop the carnage that is ongoing in Libya? What are we doing to stop the extortion that is currently ongoing in Libya? What we have done so far is that the African Union has decided to have what they call the Africa Union, European Union 5th Summit in Côte d'Ivoire. And at that they issued a joint statement condemning events that have taken place in Libya and are supporting the government of national accord and its effort to ensure that they bring justice to those who are engaged in this. At that conference in Abidjan, we saw European leaders come together as one. When you talk about the African Union and you talk about the European Union, you are talking as if we are the same length. You are talking as if we are of equal strength. We are talking as if there is some similarity of African Union and the European Union. There is none. The only similarity may be that we have the word union. Beyond that, there is none. The European Union has decided to have a single currency to strengthen their economic muscle and to have a stronghold on Africa. The African Union has no single currency and they have no hold or control over any single European country, let alone the entire Europe. And so you can't be meeting and think that you are of any strength or there is some similarity. There is none. And so once again, it's an opportunity for the European Union to showcase its strength, its power, its muscle over small countries that are not ashamed of being called countries. And we met in Abidjan and they dictated for us what our position in Libya should be. So, please, let's listen to Bob Marley. Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves. That is what we need to do as Africans, and not to see our presidents go and be surrounded by some new wits who come to tell us what the solution to our African problems should be. Particularly so when these problems are caused and influenced from outside. Why are we having this crisis now in Libya? And why have they decided to target as modern day slave trade? There is murder, killing, abduction and kidnapping is what is going on. Is that slave trade? That is what is going on. The videos that we are seeing, don't we see the way they kill human beings, taking their parts? And African leaders, including our president, are worried that it is arms from Libya that is causing instability in Africa. Really? I thought that it is arms from NATO, from the United States, and in particular from France, that were dropped. We saw them in planes, in helicopters. Bombs were dropped. Arms were dropped at what we call the rebel camps, so they can use to clear Gaddafi. Did Libya manufacture any gun, any weapon? These were dropped there. See, sometimes you are choking when you are talking about Libya, because it represented every hope for Africa. It represented every hope. Look, when this uprising started in Libya, it started from Benghazi. And what did the people do? They started with guns. They were attacking every strategic installation. And Colonel Gaddafi said no. And when Gaddafi moved in to stop it, France and all the rest of the world just jumped in and said he was abusing people's right. And I keep asking the question, would France under my kid brother Macron, because he's 39 and I'm 44, so he's my kid brother, backbone, will France today allow any group of people to go and stand at any part of France and start an uprising where they are attacking strategic installation, and the government of Emmanuel Macron will say that these people have a right to free shooting, so they should go around and shoot and attack any strategic, every strategic installation? Will that be responsible governance and leadership? When Gaddafi said no, they quickly moved in, imposed a no-fly zone, stopped Gaddafi from functioning, and they said that Gaddafi was not practicing democracy. As we counted, they threw over 3,500 bombs into Libya. They threw over 3,500 bombs attacking health posts and other places in Libya. Let's say quarter, every bomb that is thrown killed one person. How many people did they kill? That one, it was not human rights abuse. It was not murder. So, and you remember, anytime Gaddafi had an opportunity at the UN, he alerted the rest of the world that they needed to pay compensation to Libya for its carrying capacity to be able to host millions of people who wanted to cross through the desert into Europe and that Europe must compensate them for the good work they are doing. They took it lightly. They killed Gaddafi and brought him as a piece of meat and displayed in the mall. Today, there is crisis. People who were having free education, who owed nobody in the world, a country that owed nobody. Today, that country has to survive on loans. Education was free. When you were marrying, you were given 65,000 as soon as you get married, so you can start life. Accommodation was free. Food was rationed every month for those who cannot afford. And those who went to university outside of Libya were given $2,500 as stipends, apart from every other thing that has been paid. That is the country that is devastated and in tatters. What can we do? What can ECOWAS do? What can the AU do? The problems that we face nationally are the reasons for which most of our young friends, brothers, some now not even young any longer, our compatriots, the problems we face domestically are the reason for which they are looking for greener pastures and traveling through Libya in the hope that they can get through to Italy and other places. So it's a problem of job. It's not that they are lazy, but the opportunity to get jobs, to get some income that will assure them of a healthy living or a good living. That's all that most of these people that are now being beaten, killed, which we have styled slave trade, that is what they are looking for. And every one of them thinks that, look, we see the nice things being displayed on our televisions. And so we think that there is some goodness that is deposited in these European countries, that once you get there, you can go and attract the goodness and bring here. It is that hope that is leading most of our young people outside there. If you ask the solution in future, Africa must unite, take full ownership of its resources, and deploy the resources for the service of the African people. Africa is not able to unite because we still have the assumed belief that our salvation is dependent on Europe. And so Europe takes decisions and come and meet with us in Abidjan. And we say that we are there as African Union. Really? Really? What is the locus? What is the significance of the African Union in terms of tackling the problem of currency in Africa? When the EU came there, they came there with the euro. When we went to Abidjan, what did we go there with as a currency to start with? We went with the Naira, CD, CFA, what? Shilling, Kenyan shillings, Ugandan shilling, Zambian kwacha. That's what we went with. They came there with a single currency. So Africa ought and immediately needs to unite, at least to have a single and a continental currency. It shows strength. A currency shows strength. The second thing that we have to do, that out of the unification project, we will be able to own our resources and not allow our resources to be owned by the metropolis. In Ghana, our oil is owned 87% by foreigners. Ghana owns 13%. And the 13%, it was even President Mills that upped it from 10% to the 13% by the acquisition of 3% from EO Group. Otherwise, a paltry 10%. The rest of the money, the oil resources, are not meant for us. In our gold sector, it's now a giveaway. Ashanti Goldfields, Yamutu. Consolidated Diamonds, Yamutu. Pristia, Yamutu. Bogoso and all those places, the gold mines, Yamutu. So our people are without jobs, and in order to find jobs, they engage in galamsey. And we are out there on Operation Vanguard, beating them left, right, and center. Let's own the natural wealth and determine how we want to use it so that our young people can get jobs. They need stable income. And that, in my view, will assure our people. See, yesterday I was on a show with Alhaji And and he said one thing. The incidence of Kayaye was non-existent in the 60s and 70s. Why? Because state farms existed. We had virtually all year round activity. If you go to Nasia rice farms, if you come to Gumani in Tamale, Gumani was called the rice city. People were busy because they had something to do that assured them of income. We have collapsed all that. And when we see the things we see on television, mostly, is that we go to take the new fine places and we showcase, and everybody think that that is how we all live in Accra and in the rest of the world. So it is important to generate these jobs, and the governments of our African states must take center stage in doing that. Finally, let me sympathize with the many Africans who are caught up in this bizarre occurrence in an African country, because it's sad. It is bad commentary for us to be discussing Libya. You know, it is sad commentary for us to come and be thinking about Afghanistan and all other places. And you know, a few days ago, I was watching one of the international news, and I saw Slobodan Prayak,
Croat,
Yeah.
who swallowed the poison.
who decided to take poison to die because he was under the ICC for war crimes. Is George Bush alive? Are there any war crime charges on George Bush? Is Tony Blair alive? Are there any war crime charges on Tony Blair? Is Sarkozy around? For the over 3,500 bombs that were thrown into Libya. And I said that let's just take it that each bomb killed one person. Are any war crime charges being brought on Sarkozy for the virtual unilateral attack on Gaddafi? None. How long shall they kill our prophets whilst we stand aside and look?
Thank you, Mr. Bernard Mona, for re-echoing the words of Bob Nestamali here on the show.
And Sami, I don't know, I read something, I don't know whether it's true, that a CIA agent has come out to confess that he was involved in the killing of Bob Marley.
Yes.
I don't know whether you've read something.
I saw the news, but the website...
on his deathbed.
I read the website. I went to the website.
Yeah, I went to
and
the
indeed, what the man said is that he became so close to Bob Marley
I see.
that he even bought Bob Marley a pair of canvas.
Wow.
and sat in when Bob Marley decided to put on the canvas. Apparently, they have stained a nail with cancer. And so when Bob Marley put the right foot on, the nail pricked him, and Bob Marley shouted, "Ouch!" And then he knew that he had succeeded. I mean, he gives a vivid account. I went to the
incredible.
website.
Yeah. Just bestial criminality.
Yeah.
You can't fathom how
And
wicked this
he
people
said,
can become.
from the day that Bob Marley, and that he was always following Bob Marley from Paris to Britain to every place where Bob Marley was seeking treatment until he died in Miami. And that the final days, Bob Marley had shaved the dreadlocks and became so pale. And that when Bob Marley died, he couldn't control himself up to date. I mean, but the CIA can continue anyway. And as long as the idea exists,
They have no respect for human life.
these people are still alive. No war crime charges.
Yeah. Anyway, it's a minute more to the top of the hour, 12, and this is Alhaji and Alhaji, the mother of all talk shows. I'll read my final 2 or 3 text messages, and then we will hand you over to the sports team. And this one from Musa Abatwa tweets and says, "What's happening in Libya is unacceptable. Africans must wake up. AU is meaningless till total liberation of the African continent." This one again from AU Farouk says, "It is a shame and disgusting what is happening in Libya. African leadership must speak up." Jafet Tobison says, "Big up, Sami. I would like to commend Mr. Husseini and Mr. Benard Mona for their powerful speech. Keep up the good work." And this one from Felix Nyonyo says, "Homosexuality today is discussed based on political lines. God, please forgive us. I can't believe this." And it's 12 midday and time for us to check out of here and hand you over to the sports team for sports. My name is Samuel Ishen. I've been your host. I've been here with Alhaji ABA Husseini, the Honorable Member of Parliament for Sanarugu, Dr. David Percy, student of History and Politics, Mr. Ben Mona. He's the National Chairman of the PNC, and they helped me thoroughly discuss President Akufo-Addo's statement in an interview on Al Jazeera in relation to issues bordering on homosexuality and related matters. And then we looked at the CNN expose on the slave trade in Libya and what the UN, AU, and ECOWAS must do to curtail such a development in the future. That brings us to today.
Sammy, I just wanted to add that I think, in fairness, we should commend the CNN.
Yes,
At least
yes.
the underground investigations that CNN did, and even to the extent the exposure that they were able to bring this issue, for which issue has brought all this into the fore. It's a very commendable act. This fantastic art of investigative journalism.
Yeah.
And, as a journalist who has spent closer to 3 decades, I'm very, very proud of such a feat chalked up by CNN.
Africa could have our own network. It's a disgrace that we don't have. The BBC, the CNN, the Al Jazeera's. Where is the African?
Mr. Mona, thank you. And that brings us to the end of the show today. Do make it 8 Monday morning for the Gold Power Drive, and enjoy the rest of our programs. We have lots for you today.
He has labored, he has suffered to lead.